when he founded his own law practice in 1972. He was elected to the House of Representatives in Cyprus in 1981, where he served for 30 years before being sworn in as a president of Cyprus in 2013. Please join me in welcoming another Chicago warm welcome for President Nicos Anastasiades.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me first of all to thank the Chicago Council organizers for their kind invitation and their active interest as regards Cyprus-related issues. It is a pleasure and an honor indeed to have the opportunity to address such a distinguished audience at the prestigious Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Distinguished friends, exactly 2.5 years ago, during my first days in office, I received an invitation to visit Brussels to discuss an unavoidable financial rescue program for Cyprus. My economic team and I were well aware that the economy was running into trouble. The financial sector had run an unstable credit boom for more than a decade, which fueled the property and consumption boom. The impact of the decision to impose a haircut on Greek sovereign debt left our bank on the brink of collapse. There was a severe financial crisis. The public coffers were literally on the brink of exhaustion. The economy, cut off from the market since 2011, was still running excessive deficits year by year. The structural weaknesses of the Cyprus economy were also exposed by the crisis. The economy was already in recession, and unemployment had already grew by 4 times within the past 5 years. The Brussels meeting was scheduled to take place just 2 weeks after the election day. The official reports revealed a situation far worse than anyone had expected. The country was faced with an imminent economic collapse comparable in its magnitude to nothing since the 1974 Turkish invasion. This was the time, Great Recession, and unfortunately, it was too late for me to request an election recount. The signs from Europe were not encouraging. It was obvious that the majority of euro area countries were determined to take a very harsh stance on Cyprus, a small and non-systemic country with just 0.2% of the Eurozone GDP. Having initially misdiagnosed the causes of the crisis, they were determined to tighten the economic governance of the Eurozone. Cyprus could serve either as an example for other economies on the geographical periphery of the EU, or even as an experiment for the Eurozone's future policy design. To avoid the upcoming Armageddon, and considering that the second largest systemic bank of my country had already reached the point of no return, we had to adhere to an unprecedented an unprecedented and still questionable Eurogroup decision, which included severe haircut of bank deposits. At the same time, we had no alternative but to agree on a program of economic reform and fiscal consolidation. With strict capital controls in place, the speculation amongst economists was that the program came too late. There were voices, both internally and internationally, that Cyprus should default, that we should leave the Eurozone or even the European Union. My government had to make this program work. It was not easy, but for us, there was no other option. Ladies and gentlemen, just 2.5 years later, I stand before you and state with confidence that we expect a smooth and successful completion of the program within the next few months, by March 2016, actually. Most importantly, I can proudly present Cyprus as a success story of economic reform. The Cypriot people displayed great patience and resilience, and we have turned the page. We are emerging stronger from the crisis, and we can be very optimistic for the future. Cyprus has officially exited recession and is registering growth as of this year. A much stronger growth than anyone had expected. We're on the road towards full recovery with a restructured and fully recapitalized banking sector and with a strong presence of major US investors like Wilbur Gross and Third Point, with the fiscal imbalances fully addressed, without increasing taxes and without taking socially painful budget cuts, with radical structural reforms undertaken, with Cyprus returning to the international markets much earlier than any other program country. Over the past 2 years, we have achieved more than just implementing a difficult program. We have maintained one of the most attractive tax regimes in Europe, confirming the country's reputation as an excellent business destination. The country's profile as a transparent international center was further enhanced by joining the FATCA list. New double tax treaties and other international agreements have been concluded. Our comparative advantages not only remain intact, but are further enhanced. New productive sectors of the economy are on the rise. The international lenders repeatedly commended Cyprus for its continuous economic improvement, and the doomsday scenarios for Cyprus have been replaced by praises. Emerging stronger from the crisis, a small miracle, and the unexpected resilience of Cyprus are just few of the remarks. Dear friends, we had to take very difficult and unpopular decisions. But thanks to the hard work of the people and the responsibility exhibited by the political parties across the political spectrum, Cyprus is entering a new era of growth and prosperity. But most importantly, it is entering an era of sustainable prosperity, not a cyclical prosperity that starts with a boom but inevitably comes to a bust, based on responsibility, so that never again we would have to rely on third-party solidarity or painful and conditional bailouts. Based on our own ambitious reform agenda, which upon completion will significantly enhance the competitiveness and the growth potential of our economy. Many reforms are either concluded or at an advanced stage of implementation, including a pension system reform, a bold welfare reform which includes streamlining the number of benefits, better targeting, and the establishment of a minimum guaranteed income for all those in need, in parallel with an active labor initiative for those eligible. A public administration reform, including a reform of the wage bill, labor market reforms, a tax administration reform. Other critical growth changing reforms have been already initiated. An ambitious privatization program, a digital strategy, and a judicial reform. We are also working on improvement of the business environment, and we intend to transform our bureaucracy from a red tape to a red carpet for investors. It is the full implementation of our reform program that will lay down the foundations for sustainable growth in the long run. That will set the framework for attracting foreign direct investments in the productive sectors of the economy. Distinguished friends, referring to the remarks of my dear friend Nicos Anastasiades, I would suggest that one lesson any country can learn from Cyprus is that taking difficult but necessary political decisions and promoting structural reform works, even in the short run, while it is undisputed that the full benefits of structural reforms will be acquired in the long run, and as far as Cyprus is concerned, well after the term of my government, they are also important in the short run, especially in times of crisis, for one single reason. They act as catalysts for the restoration of the country's lost credibility, the restoration of confidence. And thus, you all know, the economy is all about confidence and expectations. Investors, entrepreneurs and consumers all expect macroeconomic stability, a long-term framework where they can operate and create sustainable economic activity without distortions. We really have to turn the negative expectations that led the country to the virtual collapse into a vote of confidence. Because it was this loss of confidence that sparked a negative spiral of events, with the banking sector losing deposits and capital, the government being cut off the markets, the investors being unwilling to invest, consumers are unwilling to consume, and entrepreneurs willing to fire. And to regain stability and trust requires action and real reforms. It requires commitment and determination. We did not just implement, but we actually took ownership of a program of fiscal consolidation and structural reform, and we won the uphill battle of restoring international confidence. Our quick reaction to the crisis and the front-loading of a reform strategy delivered. It enabled us, among others, to restore access to the international capital markets and to bring the levels of the yields of Cyprus bond at satisfactory levels. It gives us the chance to facilitate raising capital for the banks from big international investors, to fully lift the capital controls much earlier than anyone had expected, to encourage foreign investors to invest in key sectors of the economy of Cyprus, including tourism, shipping, mariners, energy, and hopefully very soon the ports and the casino mega project. And the Cyprus experience goes in line with that of other countries, such as Latvia and Ireland, which have, on the whole, seen better outcomes than program countries which applied a more hesitant approach. As the leader of the country, I assure you, action in these areas are not easy. The loss of credibility and many of the economic problems were caused by years of inactiveness, delays, and procrastination. Correcting this situation inevitably involves political costs and requires courage and decisiveness. This should be our job, and this should be the service we should offer as political leaders to our countries. A second lesson, ladies and gentlemen, is that the perception that fiscal consolidation always leads to deeper recession and rising unemployment is false. We can be more productive by ensuring that fiscal consolidation and economic growth go in hand. This is what we, as well as other countries, have demonstrated. Economic recovery or growth is a structural issue and does not always require continuously increasing public expenditure. For instance, by placing a leash on public expenditure, we were able to avoid the need for imposing any new taxes, and maintaining a stable and competitive tax regime is a key element for the encouragement of economic activity and for attracting foreign investments. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to move to the protest picture. The Cypriot case is a part of the wider EU crisis. For Europe, this was a crisis with a negative impact on the integration process and even on the relations between EU member states. A crisis used by populists to attack the EU and to even surface the political debate about the possibility of its actual disintegration, ignoring its unique achievement of half a century of an unprecedented peace and prosperity. However, we have to be honest with ourselves. The crisis exposed the excessive imbalances, rigidities, and uncompetitive economic structures of many Euro countries, including my own, including Cyprus. But it is also revealed the flaws of the Euro system, a mainly political experiment of forming a monetary union without a political union, or at least an effective mechanism for fiscal consolidation, without an effective monetary supervision for the European Central Bank, with the structural reforms long forgotten. It was those systemic weaknesses that allowed or even induced many Euro member countries to develop fragilities that caused excessive fiscal deficits and external indebtedness, whilst at the same time excessive risk-taking by the banking sector. And it is clear that the prosperity of our citizen is at risk if the right framework is not in place. I'm very much encouraged by the fact that action was taken at EU level. New institutions are being built and new common rules agreed. All this have happened after the decision taken against Cyprus. But I'm happy because we might contribute towards finding the proper way and they find out the deficiencies the system of Europe was suffering from. So they have taken concrete progress, and concrete progress is made in establishing an EMU framework that will comply at least with the basic requirements of sharing a common currency. The fiscal framework was consistently and considerably strengthened. A permanent crisis management mechanism, the European Stability Mechanism, was created. The banking union, as from last November, there is now one central supervisor monitoring all significant banks in the euro area, including Cyprus banks, and this is the European Central Bank. Progress towards the building of a capital markets union was made as well. Cyprus has paid a big price, not only from our own wrong policies, but also from the weakness of the economy, governance and supervision of the Eurozone and the EU. This is why Cyprus has actively supported and will continue to support those reforms at the level of the Union. Dear friends, I'm convinced that Europe learned its lesson and is succeeding in changing itself, as it did many times, of course, in the past. This is why the European project serves as a guide for all, especially for Cypriots, for my own compatriots and for my own government. The success of the 60-year-old European project, despite its difficulties, is a result of the creation of interdependencies through institutional, legal, and most importantly, economic and market means. It was the establishment of the 4 fundamental freedoms and of competition, the abolition of borders, the peaceful cooperation through trade and voluntary exchanges. It was the real application on the principle of subsidiarity. And it worked. It is upon those exact principles that we aspire to evolve the Republic of Cyprus into a federal union in the context of reaching a settlement to the 41-year-old problem. A settlement that will reunite the country, its people, the economy, and will establish good relations with our neighbors and Turkey. A settlement that will comprise all the parameters conducive to economic development, business and investment, regional stability and open markets, with none of those parameters being obstructed by political barriers, a solution which at the same time will lend the rapid alteration of the demographic character of our country. This is what we are currently negotiating with our Turkish Cypriot compatriots, to reach an agreement on evolving the Cyprus Republic to a carefully designed federal structure that will work based on those exact principles, the principle of subsidiarity, where all problems would be solved at the lowest and least concentrated level possible. The basic freedoms, the European law, and the new European structures in place that will guarantee the viability of a European federal Cyprus. This is our goal. This is what we are looking as the final goal in finding a lasting and peaceful solution. With the EU now being a more active player, we will continue contributing constructively at the negotiating table. We fully acknowledge the challenges and difficulties that lie ahead. But our responsibility towards our citizens, towards our country, is to do our best to succeed. And if we do, the resolution will act as a catalyst for the economic development for the decades to come, with huge potential benefits for many sectors of the economy. Energy, shipping, tourism, or transport are just the most obvious. Only then we will allow Cyprus to utilize its full potential, if we relieve Cyprus of all the political barriers that prevent the full exploitation of its unique geographical position. The solution of the Cyprus problem will be the most significant growth reform that we can achieve. And this is what my intention is, to work tirelessly to succeed this goal. And I'm sure that with the help of our friends, with the contribution of our friends, we might have a successful story to solve a protracted, a long-standing problem which creates a lot of problems in relations between Greece and Turkey, Turkey and Europe, Europe and NATO, and in any case, sometimes it's one of the reasons United States and Turkey, they are in a different position. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by saying that our priorities are clearly set out. Cyprus is at the turning point of history and is addressing all the big strategic questions of the future. The gas reserves discovered with our exclusive economic zone, but also in our neighborhood, worth billions of euros, are destined to transform Cyprus into an important international energy hub. Cyprus has what it takes to become an important gas supplier and energy hub, not only for the neighborhood, but for Europe itself. And this is why we are following a regional and integrated approach in our foreign policy orientation. It is only by improving our relations with all our neighbors, by building bridges, by bringing them together, that we can truly utilize the comparative advantages in natural resources that our region has been blessed with. That is why we will continue building bridges with our neighbors. And you're very well aware how strong our ties is with Israel, with Egypt, with Jordan, with Lebanon, and not only those countries. And this is why we're trying as well to build up the strongest ties with the United States. That's why we will continue, as I have said, building bridges with our neighbors, and we will step up the efforts to reunite our country. The next months, I have to admit, are critical to this end. Within this framework, our relations with the United States are of strategic importance. Besides the significant strengthening of our diplomatic relations, we are also working on building more tangible economic relations. A bilateral USA-Cyprus dialogue is in progress, addressing many issues of economic cooperation. We have seen the first significant USA investments in Cyprus and will try to facilitate more. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished friends, the positive results so far shall not lead us to complacency. We shall continue with the same decisiveness and determination in order to establish a prosperous, united Cyprus in a united Europe. We have more than a government program to implement. We have a vision to transform Cyprus and to unlock its full potential for the benefit of its people. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now we'd like to go out to the audience for questions, please. If you have a question, please raise your arm, wait for the mic, and make sure your question is a question. Who'd like to take it off? Yeah, right here, please, on the front table.
We know that the segregation of Turks in the north and Greeks in the south is artificial and came out of the invasion and occupation by Turkey. So, and also we have other examples of federations that end up into independent states after some conflict. So how do you know, what are you doing to make sure that after the Cyprus Federation, we don't end up with the Turkish state in the north and the Greek state in the south, internationally recognized by everybody, just like Serbia and Croatia are recognized by everybody right now?
Yes. First and above all, we have the high-level agreements of Makarios, Teftash, Kyprianou, Teftash, Papadopoulos, Talat, where clearly state that the solution we are looking for is a bizonal, bicommunal federation with political equality, as this has been defined by numerous resolutions of the Security Council of the United Nations. Furthermore, on 11 February 2014, we have agreed that the basis of the solution is not going to be, and above all, the negotiations are not carried between two sovereign states, as the allegations by the leader of the Turkish side at that time, an intransigent gentleman, Mr. Erdogan. But we were saying that this is a bicommunal dialogue in order to evolve the Cyprus Republic to a federal state, to a bizonal, bicommunal federation. The Cyprus Republic is there. Nobody is putting in doubt the existence, except of Turkey, whilst nowadays, after the election of Mr. Akinci, but I have to admit, a moderate Turkish Cypriot, we are negotiating not for confederation, not between sovereign states as Erdogan was alleging, but the two communities, in order to build up the new state of affairs. Definitely, it is indeed an artificial division, but 40,000 troops are there, and they are imposing this division. The status quo, which is of course unacceptable, it has changed a lot of the substances of the solution we are looking for. Greek Cypriots are selling their properties due to the lack of hope that there might be a solution. Churches, religious sites, cultural sites are destroyed. The demographic character of the northern part of the island is changing day by day. Thousands of Turks implanted by Turkey on purpose. Therefore, we have to face and to stop this happening, because one day we might face the whole of Cyprus to be under Turkish occupation, or to see that the Greek community is forced to leave the island due to the circumstances that prevailing, or the attitude by Turkey. We are witnessing the foreign policy of Turkey. We are witnessing their vision for the Ottoman Empire. We want to stop any possibility to see believe that they might succeed in Cyprus and to give an end to this vision. Once again, I have to say something. The solution is going to be a painful one, but we have to find a solution. A solution which will not create winners or leave behind losers. A win-win solution. The most important, being a European country, we have to safeguard the human rights of all Cypriots, either these are Greek or Turkish Cypriots. We have to secure the four freedoms, free of movement, free of establishment, free of exercising profession and all these kind of things. Whilst at the same time, we have to secure the human rights of the refugees. Either these are on their own properties or the right of return and all this, and above to see that the occupying troops are leaving Cyprus. We are getting rid of the occupation. This is the only way how to build up a peace, and I have to say something. If a politician is living with or is giving promises that he can give the best of the best results, he's living in illusions, and the one who is paying the bill or the cost is the people. And I'm not ready to build up illusions and to see my country divided, or to see that the occupation is going to continue with the unacceptable status quo being as a fact. What I'm worrying is that in case the negotiations are coming to an end due to our own fault, the next step is the recognition of the illegal regime of the northern part of Cyprus. And this is going to be the division. And this is going to build up two states. We have a lot of examples because, as it is well known, the big countries, they have bigger interests, national interests to serve, and not to look after countries like Cyprus. Thank you.
Mr. President, maybe from what I understand, Secretary Kerry was due to go to Cyprus in June, but was busy dealing with the Iran deal. What specific role do you see for the United States in getting to the vision that you talk about with the Cyprus peace?
It's well known that the United States is one of the superpowers. It's an ally of Turkey, so they can exercise their influence as they have done in the past. When we were applying to join Europe, it was an intervention by the then Secretary of State Holbrooke, who has helped us a lot and who has contributed to achieve our goal. In a lot of times, the United States stand by us, help us a lot, and this is a high time when we have something hopeful as regards the solution to give a hand. So, for Turkey to abandon the rhetoric and just being much more active, involved in encouraging the Turkish Cypriots to reach a settlement.
Thank you. Next question. It was right there, please, the gentleman at that table. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for joining us again here in Chicago. Kevin Johnson, Emerging Leaders Program here at the Council. You touched a bit on the natural gas finds off the coast of Greece and Cyprus. So I wondering if you could talk a bit about the recent gas finds in Egypt and how that might affect the Cypriot energy strategy.
With Egypt and as well as with Israel, we have already signed an MOU of cooperation. And I do believe that the synergies will help us a lot in order to bring together the three countries. From our own field to Zohr, to our own field from Leviathan or the other field, Leviathan and Tamar. So I do believe that energy could bring us together bring stability with the cooperation we might develop, whilst at the same time join forces. We might be actually the hub, the energy hub for Europe and not only.
Yes, please, the lady right there at the table.
I'm curious whether Cyprus has any deluge of refugees attempting to enter the country, as other European nations are facing right now.
Oh, yeah. Although we are very near to Syria, fortunately we are an island isolated from the rest of Europe. So for the time being, we are not receiving flows of refugees. But nobody knows what might happen in the next months. If the instability in Syria is continuing, not only Syria, it's Iraq, it's Yemen, it's Libya. There are so many turbulences in the area. That's why the solution of the Cyprus question is going to be a sign of model how Christian and Muslims could live peacefully together. And at the same time, to give an end to a protracted problem encourages some others, like the Middle East question, to find a solution. I am referring to problems because we have to see where the problem is coming, the source. And unless we shall face, to solve the problems at source, I don't think that it's enough to make a bargain how many thousands Germany or Belgium or Italy or Sweden or whichever of the European countries can accommodate. What you have to see is at the source. Why there are so many thousands of refugees? What we have done in order to give an end to the protracted crisis in Syria? Why we haven't been able to predict what was happening within Iraq with the ISIS or in Yemen? What was the Arab Spring? It was really a spring or it was in fact a winter? This is what we have to these are going to be and should be our deliberations within the European Union and of course with our Atlantic allies, the United States, to see how to face the reality and how to combat traffickers, all those reasons who are giving the humanitarian crisis the dimension we are witnessing.
Thanks. Yes, in the very back, please, Dean Nicos.
Mr. President, given the strategic location of Cyprus in a very politically volatile area, what is Cyprus is doing? Can you give us some insight as to what Cyprus is doing to combat terrorism in that region of the world?
In spite of our size, we are a small country, but we have excellent relations and cooperation with the United States, with Israel, with France, with the all the European allies, and we are doing our utmost, either through informations or joint actions with our allies to combat terrorists. And we have examples. Very recently we have arrested a member of the Hezbollah terrorist group, and it was not the only case. But as well as we are cooperating in giving facilities to our allies, because they have the means. We have not an air force, we have not a navy, but we are giving all the facilities. Either these are our own ports, or these are our own ports, airports and ports, in order to give the chance. We have contributed a lot to the evacuation of areas. To help once again those who have the means to combat much more effectively the terrorists. We are
Professor Sharif Bassioni, please, right here. Kathleen here.
Yes, I'm just...
One sec, Sharif, for the mic, please. Thanks.
Mr. President, just following up on the MOU between Cyprus, Egypt, and Israel, I would like to offer maybe a suggestion, and that is to look at this opportunity to take a more sub-regional strategic view of what so far has been looked upon merely as an economic matter. And that is to transform the MOU into a sub-regional international institution between Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt. This would create the type of international institution which was the foundation of Europe and grew up in the European Union, but it would send a very important message in that region of the Mediterranean and in the Middle East, that Arab countries like Egypt can cooperate with Israel and cooperate with the European country, and therefore give a greater status, an international status, to both Cyprus as well as to Egypt and Israel in that sphere.
Thank you, sir. It's a bright idea, ready to see. I mean, if you can explore it in a paper, I will be much obliged. Now, we are doing a lot, I mean, as regards the cooperation, and as we have the best of all the relations with both Egypt and Israel and the rest of the Arab countries. Very recently, I'm giving an example. After my intervention, President Donald Tusk, President of the European Council, visited Palestine, Israel, and then after repeated interventions by myself, and after we have deliberations with President El-Sisi, last weekend he was visiting Egypt and Jordan as well. At the same time, I have requested, and I'm sure that this is going to happen in the next months, for an invitation to be extended to Prime Minister Netanyahu and the President of the Palestine Authority to be heard by the European Council. So what I'm looking is to see that Europe is much more involved and much more active in our neighborhood in order to help finding the peaceful way to solve this very protracted problem. But your own idea, it's something which will help these efforts. Therefore, I'm once again much obliged if I shall have a piece of paper to see how it can work and to implement it. Thank you very much.
We like giving Professor Bassioni homework at programs. It's good. Right over here for the last question this morning, please.
Thank you. One country I haven't heard you mention yet is China, which seems to be reaching out all over the globe to establish relations. Do you have bilateral relations with China? Are they taking an interest in your issues and your problems?
Do you belong to the intelligence service? I'm saying why. On the 12th, I'm paying a visit to Beijing, and I'm meeting the president and all the officials. In any case, I mean, it's an official visit to China after an invitation received by the president. We are trying to, and we have already, through incentives we are giving for permanent residency, incentives, I mean, to invest. We have a small community, but we are looking for a much greater investments. Actually, I'm invited in a conference. It is a combination of official basic meetings and so on, but it's a conference as well on the Silk Road and the investment China is looking for. So I'm taking the opportunity, the chance to be there from the 12th to 19th of October in order to see what can I do for my country to enhance the relations with China and to encourage investments to Cyprus.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking President Anastasiades.